We are now partway through an additional 24 hours without fighting in Gaza. A deal reached in the last minutes before a deadline means there will be another day for hostages to be freed in exchange for the release of Palestinian detainees.
Israel has expressed a willingness to continue the pause on the assumption that hostages are released. So our position is clear. The question is, will Hamas continue to release hostages, 10 for every day of a continued pause?
This is video from Hamas showing the 10 Israelis being freed last night, while negotiations at times appeared close to breaking down. Among this group, a 13-year-old girl, 4 Thai nationals, and 2 Israelis with dual Russian citizenship are also back in Israel. As part of the latest exchange, a young Palestinian activist is among the detainees to be released.
Step.
That is 22-year-old Ahed Tamimi, and you may recognize her because she made headlines in 2017 when she was sentenced to 8 months in prison for slapping an Israeli soldier after her cousin was shot. Video of that moment and incident went viral. Tamimi is seen as a hero on the West Bank. She was arrested earlier this month by Israel's military, accused of inciting violence with a social media post. The post is no longer online. Israeli media, though, say it called for the slaughter of settlers. Tamimi's mother says the Instagram account did not belong to her daughter and tells Agence France Presse dozens of social media accounts use her daughter's image. We begin our coverage live this hour with senior international correspondent Margaret Evans. She's in Jerusalem this morning with the very latest. This deal, Margaret, for releasing hostages and detainees, we know now it will continue at least through today. There is an ongoing push to extend it further. What do we watch for?
Well, Heather, it relies on the Hamas producing more hostages. And what we're starting to see as we've had several days of these exchanges is that, if you remember, the original terms of the agreement were that the exchanges, Israeli hostages for Palestinian detainees, would be women and children. The number of women and children believed to be held by Hamas in Gaza is diminishing. And so it's becoming a bit of a discussion about, are those still the terms of the deal? Would you extend the category to potentially include elderly men, hostages who are male but not members of the Israeli Defense Forces? So it's coming down to that. Yesterday, in the discussions, you talked about this long delay. One of the things we were hearing here was that one of the reasons for the delay was that Hamas was actually offering Israeli hostages, but also the return of 3 bodies of hostages who'd been killed. Israel rejected that firmly. So that's where we're at. Israel has said all along, as long as the hostage releases keep happening, it's willing to give another day's pause, 24 hours of pause, but not indefinitely. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, continues to say after the pause, it's back to war. But he is, of course, under international pressure to extend the pauses. They're clearly, many governments clearly hoping to see this potentially turn into a longer truce or ceasefire, especially given the dire circumstances for Gazans, Palestinians living in Gaza. And today, there will be more diplomatic pressure, presumably, and support from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who is again in the region, I think for the 3rd time since October 7th. Here's what he had to say about what he's expecting in the hours to come.
It's also enabled an increase in humanitarian assistance to go to innocent civilians in Gaza who need it desperately. So this process is producing results. It's important, and we hope that it can continue.
Margaret, again, the truce extended for another day, but although there is optimism and a push for an extension, concerns about a moment of widening violence and conflict Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking to Margaret, and unfortunately, we've lost our connection audio-wise with Margaret. So we will reconnect with her and carry on, and we'll bring you the latest on that. There were a number of people killed in an attack at a bus stop in Jerusalem, and the people who carried that out, the two gunmen, said by Hamas to be their members. So we will continue to bring you. I'm not sure if we do have Margaret back. Do we want to go back to Margaret? Sorry about that, Margaret. We do have you back again. We just lost your audio connection for just one moment. But come back and give me the details there. I was mentioning, even as there is optimism about the extension here, this concern about violence with the deaths and the attack at the bus stop in Jerusalem. So what is the latest information to this hour of that incident?
Yes, Heather, there was an attack in occupied East Jerusalem, a neighborhood called Ramat. Two Palestinians who've been identified as brothers by Israeli police from East Jerusalem opened fire reportedly on commuters waiting at a bus station, killing three commuters. An off-duty policeman intervened. The two Palestinian attackers were killed. They have, as I think you mentioned, been claimed by Hamas, who described the attacks as a commando operation, encouraging more what they described as uprising in the occupied territories, the West Bank. Obviously, this is one more example of the tensions that are capable of being inflamed here on many different levels. We were in the city of Jenin in the West Bank yesterday after an Israeli raid there. The Israelis saying they're going in to take to target a senior commander with the Islamic Jihad. They say based in Jenin. That operation killed two militants. The two militants were killed, but two children were also killed during that raid. So it gives you a sense of just how worried people are here in Jerusalem, in the occupied territories, across Israel and in Gaza, about what's coming next in this conflict.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Senior international correspondent Margaret Evans, our CBC News team on the ground there in Jerusalem.